Sometimes the best thing to do is just drink your emotions away. Well, that was a mistake. What is up, guys? It's me, Fan here. Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be doing a book haul. Now, granted, this is nowhere nearly the amount of books that I got, all the books that I got in the past, year since I last made a book haul, but since I'm coming back to BookTube, or I'm back on BookTube now, so I'm finally going to show some of the books that I got. These include some highlights of mine, some books I'm excited to read currently, and some books that I think are pretty snazzy in terms of its edition or style, or what it consists of. So, I'm not going to rant too much on that because, like I said, even though I've been gone for a year, you guys should probably know what a book haul is if you have any idea what BookTube is. But anyway, let's get into this. But like I said, I'm not going to waste any time, so I'm just going to hop right into the first book. And I know I technically showed this off in my last book rant. I know everybody has been... I actually got a comment about this book on my last video, so... Hey, it has some discussion, but I just want to talk about this book because I just read it, and it blew me away. I knew I was going to love it, but there was a moment where I thought I wasn't going to love it, but then I ended up loving it again. And that's The Humans by Matt... I know his name's Matt Haig, but, why not just make it guttural? The Humans is a spectacular novel. It is about an alien who comes down to Earth and kills a man and disguises himself as that human named Andrew Martin, who's a professor in England. And his job is to not take over human race, but take down human race, eliminate them. Or certain individuals. But the more he focuses his life on Earth, the more he falls in love with it. And that's all I'm going to say, because there's a lot of twists and turns in this book that I honestly did not see coming. This book is philosophical, and I know that term gets thrown around by pretty much any book with a single idea of what it's talking about, but this book really takes it to the next level, especially for a sci-fi novel. Usually I feel like sci-fi and fantasy can kind of be shallow, but especially fantasy. But even sci-fi has its moments where it's just completely dry and doesn't talk about anything. The Humans is the exact opposite of that. It talks about a lot. And I am happy to say that I loved this book. The only reason why I don't give this a 5 out of 5 is that I was conflicted about the writing at first. It made sense on why it was written in this style, because it was about an alien trying to disguise himself as a human, and he literally said, "I'm not great with languages, as most of my alien contemporaries are," but it's so well done. The characterization of this book is phenomenal. The story is phenomenal. The writing really got to me after a little bit, but in a good way. It's just a spectacular novel. What else do I have to say? Okay, the rest of the books, I think except for one and two-thirds of another one, I haven't read. So, and this includes this first one, and this is the collected stories of Frank O'Connor. Now, Frank O'Connor is known for being one of the most famous Irish writers of all time. He's up there with Joyce, which, if you know anything about me, you know my feelings about Joyce and my absolute hate for James Joyce. But Frank O'Connor sounded like somebody that was just a whole different ballpark from Joyce, so I thought I'd give him a shot. But I haven't picked it up yet. I did read one of the stories, and to be honest, I was kind of bored by it. I wasn't really into the writing style. I was very much in the dialect, a regional dialect, and I wasn't, getting into it at all. But I'm not going to give up on this collection just because of one story. But granted, it was one of the most famous stories in the collection, which is called Guest of a Nation, I think is what it's called. Yeah, guests of the nation. There was multiple guests. But granted, I was also on an airplane. I was just kind of oh my god, I need to get home, and it was awful. It was an awful plane ride. But Frank O'Connor is I've heard is an absolutely spectacular author. I've heard he's up there with John Cheever as one of the greatest short story writers, and I love John Cheever's short stories. So hopefully I can consider this just on the same par. And the next one is one of my most anticipated books I got recently, because I've just heard so much things about this author. I actually read a snippet from one of her novels for my AP Literature class and loved what I read. So I am beyond excited for this book. And that's Love Medicine. And it's the new expanded edition by Louise Erdrich. This sounds amazing. It's kind of like an interconnected short story collection about two families in North Dakota, I think. Written in Erdrich's some uniquely poetic, powerful style, Love Medicine brings to raging life a multi-generational portrait of new truths and secrets whose time has come, and those who have left their ancestral land, and those who have stayed behind. Of strong men and women caught in an unforgettable drama of anger, desire, and the healing power that is love medicine. This sounds fantastic. But at the same time, when it comes to, like, the premise, I don't want to assume anything, but I think it's about, like, Native Americans and that whole heritage, but at the same time, I don't really feel like this is going to be, what am I talking about? It's going to be, I know it's probably going to be fantastic. I just need to get into this because I literally checked out her other novel, The Roadhouse, which won the National Book Award 3 times from the library, and 3 times I sent it back without reading it. I'm horrible with that type of thing. So once I saw this for $1 at a thrift store, I yanked it, and I'm so excited that I found it because I'm so excited to read it. Alright, the next book is up there with Love Medicine. Is one of the ones I'm just the most anticipated for when I come around to read it, and that's The Group by Mary McCarthy. Now, unlike some other books, I actually did try to read this, and I was a little bored by it, and then another book, I don't know which one, came into my interest more, and I dropped this. The reason why I picked it back up and bought it for $1 at a library book sale was because not only was it in great condition, in the edition that I wanted, but as you guys know, my favorite book of all time is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And I periodically look up on Google books similar to The Secret History. And this is the #1 book that always pops up on the list. No matter what website or what writer says it, writes the article, this book is always put in the similar reads to Donna Tartt's The Secret History articles. And from what it sounds like on the back, it sounds absolutely fantastic. It's about a group of women who recently graduated from college starting their lives. It sounds exactly up my alley. I've heard fantastic things about it. And just Mary McCarthy in general. Specifically from Steve Donahue, who I've praised before on this channel. He loves Mary McCarthy. I don't know if he loves this book in particular, but I know he loves the book, her book, Memories of a Catholic Girlhood, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Memories of a Catholic Girlhood. Yeah, Mary McCarthy I've heard absolutely fantastic things about. And if I want to get into her, even though this book is pretty big, her other books are actually very short. So that's a very pleasing thing to hear, but this book just sounds phenomenal. Okay, guys, I have to stop for a moment. Not stop for a moment, but I'm going to keep going. But I may talk for this one a while because this is a play. And it recently became one of my all-time favorite plays. And that is Equus by Peter Shaffer. Just brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I'm thinking of maybe bumping this up to a 5 out of 5. I loved it so much. This is the story of a psychologist who researched this young man named Alan Strang who has an obsession with horses and ends up blinding 6 horses in a weird case that he has to take over. And that's pretty much all I have to say. That is all I have to say because, oh my god, this play's phenomenal. This is such a phenomenal play. The writing just hits you in a way that very few authors can hit you with, especially for a play. Like, you normally, like, even some of the best plays, like Waiting for Godot, really shines in their, like, symbolism and themes instead of their writing. Equus is one of those plays alongside Shakespeare. Of course, I think Shakespeare is the better writer. But Peter Shaffer's writing in this is just stellar. It's just fantastic. It had me gripped from cover to cover. If you want a gripping play that has literary merit, but at the same time will entertain the crap out of you, this is probably one of the first ones I'll recommend, if not the first one. It is absolutely fantastic. It's very accessible. I loved it. You can even read it. It's so easy to read. You can read it from the script without listening to an audiobook, without seeing a performance, and you'll get a great picture of this. I'm already thinking of a reread of this. It's phenomenal. Alright, the next two books are based on another book that I consider one of my all-time favorites. One of my favorite books of the year so far is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters, a fantastic modern novel that has a Victorian-esque style to it, and is set in Victorian England. And it's phenomenal, because most of the time Victorian novels set in like the either rich side or the dirt poor side. Fingersmith fuses the two worlds together, and I loved it. It has some of my new all-time favorite characters, like Mrs. Suxby. If you've read this book, you'll know exactly why I love Mrs. Suxby. She's phenomenal. But then I found these two books at the library bookstore for like, I think $3 a piece. Yeah, $3 a piece. And the first one is The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. I think this is set in like either during World War II or right after World War II. I'm hoping right after, because sometimes the best books I've ever read come like in post-World War II novels, like The Shadow of the Wind, and one of my all-time favorite, The English Patient. But I've heard I haven't heard mixed things about this one in particular. I've heard this one's fantastic, so I'm excited to get into this one. And this next one is actually the one I'm more interested in, but I heard very mixed things about it. And that's The Paying Guess. And it sounds fantastic. It's like 1920s England. Now, unlike in America, where it was like the roaring 20s at that time, and everybody was going crazy, and it was economic greatness in America, Europe was devastated, especially with World War II, especially with countries like Germany, which were so bad that a young man named Adolf Hitler came into power, and the rest is history. But enough of my historical rants. The Paying Guest, I've heard mixed things about it, but it sounds phenomenal. It sounds something right up my alley. Sarah Waters has such a great attention to detail. Maybe not as much as like Donna Tartt, but like she definitely has her talents with detail. It's just, she's such a phenomenal writer. I'm going into these books semi-blind. I have a rough idea what they're about. I know their setting, but I don't know what like will happen, obviously. But Sarah Waters, I'm so excited to get more into her, because the first book I absolutely adored from her. This next book I know next to nothing of, but the reason why I picked it up is because of the story related to my AP Literature class, and that's The Dewbreaker by Edwidge Danticat. Fun fact, Edwidge Danticat is coming to my university in September, about a couple weeks after I get there. Edwidge Danticat's coming there, and coming to my university, and I am pumped. I'm gonna go see her. Also, Neil Gaiman's coming to my university in November, and I am pumped about that, because if you know, The Sandman is my favorite book series of all time. But anyway, about this book. The first story in this book is called The Book of the Dead. The House of Dead, I think, is a Dostoevsky book. The Book of the Dead, in my AP Literature class, we had 4 stories that we had to review. Or not review, but like write a whole essay on. And it was one of our like 5 big essays of the year. And the one I chose was not The Book of the Dead. But The Book of the Dead did interest me. But there's 3 stories that I was fascinated by. But you'll know which one I chose from just me describing them. One of them was The Book of the Dead. One of them was Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri, which I almost went with. But then The Prospectors by Karen Russell came about. And if you know me, I love Karen Russell. I think she's phenomenal. But The Dewbreaker, I did hear really good things about Edwidge Danticat in general. So I'm excited about this. I'm really excited about this, actually. Alright, the next book is a short story collection that I know next to nothing about, honestly. But I've heard a lot about this author because he was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. I think he was nominated for this short story collection, actually. But he has never won, but he's been nominated, I think, twice. And that is You Are Not a Stranger Here by Adam Hazlitt. This just sounds something right up my alley. The idea of a literary short story collection really interests me right now. And this was always one that was on my radar, but I never got because it was always really expensive on Amazon, especially for the paperback, which was like $12 for like this tiny little paperback. I'm like, what's the point? But then I found this hardcover for like $2 at $2.50 for at a thrift store, and I'm really excited to get into this. I feel like I'm now probably going to get used books from now on, or unless if the books are really cheap on Amazon, I'm not going to buy them retail anymore. Like, I'm probably not going to Barnes & Noble as much anymore, but Adam Hazlitt, I know next to nothing about it, but it sounds good from the little things I've heard. Alright, this next book is probably the most interesting book in my collection. Well, not collection, but like in this haul. And that is, it's a bind-up of 3 books by Ann Tyler, and you think, oh yeah, like, this is probably some of her most famous stuff. I've heard of 2 of these books, but vaguely. And one of these books, called A Patchwork Planet, I've never heard of it before getting this book. But I did hear of Ladder of Years and Saint Maybe, mainly because Maxwell from Well Done Books read both of these books. But I don't think he's even read A Patchwork Planet. But Ann Tyler, I love the concepts of her books. And I loved her book, The Accidental Tourist. I think that was a fantastic book. And then every other time I tried to get into them, Ann Tyler has just been a disaster. I have not liked anything else I've tried from Ann Tyler. But hopefully I could change that, because she does sound somebody I could potentially love. But she's just not gripped me yet. So we'll see. But as of right now, I'm just not gripped. May try these a little later. But as of right now, I'm just not super crazy about it. But oh well. And then the final book, we're going complete 180 here. We're going from, like, literary fiction to a graphic novel. But not any graphic novel. The first deluxe edition of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Okay, so, backstory. I started slightly getting into comics again because I reread the Sandman series by Neil Gaiman this past month. And I adored it, or mainly in June. And I loved it all over again. In fact, I think I loved it even more the second time around. And then I started looking at comic book series that I thought I should read again. And Saga has twice as many volumes now as it did when I last read it. So I decided to just go back to the beginning, start all over, and just read the entire series all over again. I'm about the equivalent of 2 volumes in, and just like Sandman, I think I'm loving Saga more on my second read than when I first read it when I was like, I think I was like 14 when I first read Saga, or 15, but yeah, I absolutely love it. I would show you some art by hold on, let me find a great picture. Fiona Staples' art style is just beautiful. I love Fiona Staples' art style. I love Brian K. Vaughan's writing. Like, I love Why the Last Man, but I think he probably shines the most in this series. And the best part is yet to come, because it's signed by Brian K. Vaughan! Anyway, Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I'm so excited to continue this. In fact, I may read the 3rd volume today. So that was the video, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below on what you guys thought of the video. And as always, I'm Mega Man Chief Fan. And I'll see you later, guys. I finally got the intro exit right.